Hey, what's up guys? So today we're going to be talking about The Amazing Spider-Man number 27. I will outright be talking about the comic book itself, so if you haven't read it, I will be talking about the entirety of the comic. But if you don't mind following the story through my video, then you're also welcome to do so. But without further ado, let's begin. So we begin the story with Spider-Man and Black Cat. They're after a villain, and it looks like Spider-Man spotted him, and he says, "I've got him." Black Cat responds with, "That's great, but I'm not loving your tone. Try to have some fun with it." Spider-Man does question why. Why does he have to? Black Cat responds with, "Because that's allowed, okay? Okay?" But Spider-Man doesn't say anything, and he moves in for the attack of the villain, and it's revealed to be Shocker, the one that they're chasing after. Spider-Man moves in and says, "Get on the ground, Herman. I'm not playing around." The Shocker turns around to look over at Spider-Man and says, "Thanks for letting me know." Gauntlet's set to serious, and begins shocking Spider-Man in his direction, trying to hit him of course. Spider-Man does get alerted of this and tries moving out of the way, but it looks like he was still caught off guard with this attack. That's how the artwork is portrayed here. But nonetheless, he does move out of the way. Black Cat finally catches up to the fight and goes up to the Shocker and says, "Don't hurt him, Herman." The Shocker feels the need to ask, why not? And Black Cat walks up to Shocker in a flirtatious manner and says, "Because I didn't bait you with a too good to be true job so you can kill my boyfriend. I'm just trying to loosen him up." The Shocker responds with, The tip was from you? This is a setup?" And as the Shocker's getting distracted with the Black Cat's flirting, she manages to mess around with his Shocker gloves without him realizing it. The Shocker continues with his angry rant by saying, "Who do you think I am?" and immediately starts attacking with his gauntlets. But Spider-Man swoops in to save Black Cat, and as she's getting carried away, she does respond to the Shocker's question by saying, "A palate cleanser for the hero who's fought everyone." And Spider-Man says, "Don't antagonize him, Cat. This job is dangerous enough as it is." Black Cat questions, "But it's also kind of fun, right?" And he responds with, "No." She continues, "A little." The Shocker interrupts their conversation and says, "Let me settle this. You're both oofed," and shocks in their direction again. But this time, the gauntlets just fall apart from his hands. And he's like, "What? What did you do?" Black Cat shrugs and says, "Oh no. Did my dirty thieving little fingers do something bad?" The Shocker freaks out and says, "Is this funny to you? This is my job, and now I have to oof you." Spider-Man glares at Black Cat and says, "You see how these things escalate?" And she responds with, "I don't think he means it." While in the background, the Shocker's comedically just freaking out over this, chasing them as if he's sort of making like a choking motion almost. Black Cat finishes by saying, "Really bad choice of words, Herman." Spider-Man rages here for a split moment and yells, "Nobody's oofing anyone," and punches the Shocker in the face, knocking him unconscious. And Black Cat sees this and how he just lashed out and questions, "You feel better?" while getting up to him and holding his arm. Spider-Man says, "You know I don't. This isn't a game, Cat. People get hurt." Black Cat brings up, "Like Miss Marvel?" And Spider-Man confirms. And Black Cat finally acknowledges and says, "Maybe this was too much too soon. City seems quiet after the emissaries attack anyways. Let's call it a day. Get you away from prying eyes." And this is where it's revealed that the Dr. Octopus arms from issue 6, they're just kind of like hanging out on a building in the distance, just observing Spider-Man. Now, it looks like Black Cat has some communication with Norman Osborn. She says, "Norman, can you send a detainment team for the Shocker?" Spider-Man signing off for a while. We cut to a brief flashback of Spider-Man holding Miss Marvel, and it's from the perspective of Norman Osborn, who's just zoning out. And one of his assistants is trying to get his attention by saying his name. "Mr. Osborn? You there? Mr. Osborn?" He finally snaps into reality and says, "Oh yes, what is it?" The assistant continues, "We got word from the DA's office. They're not going to prosecute. They agreed that Ashley Kafka, aka the Queen Goblin, was a danger to the public. Your actions were justified. You're not responsible for her oof." Norman questions, "Not responsible, but I'm the one who..." The assistant cuts him off and continues, "In any measurable legal sense, it never even happened. You're completely in the clear. That's why you pay us, so you don't have to worry about it yourself." Norman Osborn gets a brief flashback over the Queen Goblin fight, and in doing so, he zones out again and stops listening to his assistant while she questions, "Mr. Osborn, are you listening to me?" But he's just whispering to himself, I had to I had to. Almost like he's having some weird moment. We cut to Spider-Man, Peter Parker, who just got to his apartment, and it looks like he's exhausted and he's about to lay down, and he's thinking to himself, how long has it been since Miss Marvel Kamala gave her life to MJ, to save all of us? Black Cat is right. She'd want us to go on, keep fighting the good fight, and I will for her, eventually. And he slowly passes out into sleep. And suddenly there's a noise out of nowhere that sounds kind of robotic. Almost like a zzz noise. And it's revealed to be the Dr. Octopus arms that were spying on them earlier. But if you did read issue 6, he ends up being homies with the original Dr. Octopus arms. So they established this like unspoken friendship that they have. The arms are in his room and they just tuck him in. And after doing so, they're seen leaving through the window and going up to the roof of the building. And he's seen just moving building through building. When he unfortunately gets to one building that happens to have a sinister person there, it questions, zip? The arms sort of question with its little noises that it makes who this person is. But the hidden person out of frame says, if it isn't my better half stepping out on me again. And flipping the page, it's revealed to be Dr. Octopus, and he's confronting his original arms. He points at them and says, if you thought I would forgive your betrayal, have I got a surprise for you? And he's seen pressing a button that he has and instantly sends his original arms into shock. We move over to the lair of Dr. Octopus, where it's shown that he has the original arms just held hostage while he's speaking to them. And Dr. Octopus says, when I was a young man, I fell in love with a goddess. They called her Radiation, the atomic song. Her beauty was so holy no man could see her. Her form so sacred no man could touch her. So I became more than a man. I built you, referring to the original arms, connected you to my spinal cord so I could touch her, feel her. And oh, she tickled me. And oh man. Oh, this part of the story, this is basically referring to, man, radiation really turned on Dr. Octopus. But anyways, he continues his monologue to his original arms and says, but over the years, so slowly that I barely noticed, it was you and I who became enmeshed. You came to intuit my every wish, know my every intention, and yet somehow you betrayed me to protect Spider-Man, my greatest enemy. This wouldn't vex me if I could find some defect of design, some trace of tampering. I'd hypothesize your affinity for Spider-Man came from my own mind. If the thought wasn't so outlandish, it reddens my face. No. I'm afraid the only answer is, you're broken and must be replaced. Dr. Octopus turns over to a new set of arms that he has designed, and he starts attaching a spinal cord to them, and says, by a system with redundancies, my brain signals filtered through a medium of self-validating nanofluid, a blockchain of consciousness. Each octoid contains a self-correcting copy of a whole, complete with my particular charms, which leaves you with only one purpose: to be destroyed. And he uses his new arms to destroy the old ones. And with Dr. Octopus's new arms, he's able to detach smaller sections of the arms to create little minions that just move about his whim. And that's how he destroys his original arms. We move over to Oscorp, where Peter Parker's meeting up with Norman Osborn. As Peter does meet up with Norman, and Norman's just caught looking at his gold goblin suit. Peter questions Norman, and Osborn says, I found Kamala in here snooping around right before I joined the fight with Raven. I chased her off, but something in me knew she wasn't going to stay away. I recognized something in her, the same thing I always saw in you, the damn heroism. And now I recognize something far less flattering in myself, a body count that seems to follow me around. I was so upset by Kamala's death, I had to be reminded that I killed Queen Goblin last month. Peter tries to reassure him that it wasn't his fault, but he doesn't get a chance to, and Norman continues saying, don't worry, Peter, I'm not making excuses. I know if I had never been the Green Goblin in the first place, Kamala never would have joined Oscorp. She never would have suspected I had evil intentions. It's all my fault. That's what you came here to say, isn't it? And in this part of the story, it does look like Norman is slowly losing his sanity here. Kinda reverting back to his, insane Green Goblin instincts that he's got, from the past. But this is like one of the moments where Peter actually comes through for the reason that Norman hired him to, and that's to, you know, keep him in check so that he doesn't revert back to that Green Goblin state. And so Peter says, "No, Norman, not at all. I came here to make sure you're okay, to make sure you can handle all this, to make sure you don't, you know." Norman looks shocked at Peter and says, "Oh, this is what you do, isn't it? Take responsibility for all of us. It must be exhausting, and it can't leave a lot of space for your own feelings." Peter responds with, "Maybe, but I'm not gonna let anything bad come out of her sacrifice. I owe her that much," referring to Miss Marvel. Norman responds with, I know it's not what we are exactly, but I would like to be a good friend to you, to the extent you'll let me. To that end, you don't have to worry about me. The Green Goblin is a road I will never go down again. I'm okay. Promise." Peter says, I believe you. Sorry I worried. It's just the last couple of weeks have tried really hard to push you over the line. Queen Goblin alone. Norman says, "You're right. And though I will always be conflicted by my role in her oof, we can both take solace in one fact, that she's gone forever." Now we move over to Ravencroft. For the people that don't know what Ravencroft is, it's like an insane asylum where they would keep, you know, insane supervillains that Spider-Man would fight. For one good example would be like Carnage. That's basically where they kept him. But in this case, we're dealing with someone else. Anyways, we're in Ravencroft. We have one scientist that's waiting for another, and the one that just arrives says, Are you sure? Thought the schedule had a typo." The one waiting for him says, "Typo?" The scientist that just arrived says, "Ashley Kefka was cremated for staff safety. How are we supposed to do an autopsy?" The scientist that's been waiting for his friend says, "Kefka was officially cremated and you were supposed to meet me 15 minutes ago for her unofficial autopsy." The doctor that arrived late questions, "Unofficial autopsy?" And the doctor that's been waiting there says, "We thought Queen Goblin was infected with a bio-augmented chemical, but her tissue is clean. That means she was empowered by some sort of self-expressing malevolent force. We've never seen anything like it. You think we're just gonna chuck her body in a furnace? Use your brain, dip," and gets cut off. At that point, and off frame, he gets offed. The doctor that arrived there witnesses this and says, "Holy sh!" Core censorship, and it's revealed to be the Queen Goblin, who looks like she didn't get oofed, obviously faked it, and just came after these two doctors. Poor lads. And if at this part of the story you're confused as to who the Queen Goblin is, she is completely different than the Goblin Queen from the previous stories. Keep that in mind. This is a completely different villain. She was introduced in the Hobgoblin arc and some of the issues in the past that I've covered. Now we cut over to J. Jonah Jameson, who's having a freak out over reading his competitor's newspaper with the headline saying "Ex-Mayor Rampages." And it's a picture of JJ with Dr. Octopus's arms attached to him from The Amazing Spider-Man issue 6. But anyways, JJ's on the phone with the competitor newspaper as he's reading this headline, and he's saying, "I want a retraction. I want an apology. I want your head on a pike. Ex-Mayor Rampages? It was a private wardrobe malfunction. You exploited a tragedy to sell newspapers." "How do I know?" "Because I used to do it all the time." "Where did you get the photo?" "Who sold me out?" "Protect your sources. Your paper is a triumph up tabloid butt rag. Maybe Bigfoot can't take you to court, but I sure as hell can. You listen to me. I'm gonna come down there and..." He gets cut off and hears knocking at his door. Curious by the knocking, JJ opens the door angrily and yells, "What?" And it's revealed to be Dr. Octopus's original arms, and they're all broken and messed up in front of his doorstep. JJ says, "I'm gonna have to call you back." And that's how that story ends. So what do I think about the comic book itself? Well, I thought it was pretty damn good. I liked it. I really did enjoy it. Although the beginning did seem kind of messed up on how they did the shocker on Black Cat's side, which basically set him up for this heist just so Spider-Man can beat him down to quote-unquote loosen him up, I guess make him stop being too serious. Because after Miss Marvel's death, it seemed that Spider-Man just became a little too serious with how he does things. And this was just Black Cat's method of just trying to get a more humorous side out of Spider-Man. But in doing so, they played the Shocker like a fool, and then they got him arrested by Norman's crew. Yeah, the start seemed a little lacking. I kind of got a a little worried there. But then they started introducing Norman Osborn's side, and I guess the events that he had to go through in his comic run. I didn't read it, so I don't know, but it looks like he ended up offing the Goblin Queen, and now he's sort of feeling guilty about it. Some level of insanity is starting to like bubble up inside of him again, and that caught my attention. Spider-Man getting home incredibly exhausted and having Dr. Octopus's original arms tuck him in, badass. I thought that section was pretty funny, not to like. With the continuity of issue 6 and having the original arms sort of like keeping an eye out on Spider-Man, almost like his guardian angel. That was a pretty funny touch. I liked it. And then coming off that, immediately afterwards, we get Dr. Octopus's introduction and how he kidnapped the original arms. Basically explain how he was incredibly dumbfounded with how they ended up teaming up with Spider-Man. But inevitably he comes to the point where the conclusion is the arms are broken and he has to create new ones with multiple redundancies so that that doesn't happen again. Oh, and also they made a point that radiation tickled his pickle, and that was pretty funny. I like it. So now his new arms, they're able to, I don't know if I carefully explained it as I was talking about the comic, but his new arms are able to sort of break apart into tiny little droids that just abide by his command and whatever he wants to do with it. But they're also gooey, so I don't know what they're gonna do with that. They're pretty adorable looking droids, not gonna lie. And they're just ripping apart the original arms, which of course you feel bad for them. Kinda messed up, dog. I like the little setup also with Queen Goblin. It looks like they're gonna utilize her again. She's not out of the count yet. Although Osborn is having his moments, you know, thinking about how he did off the Queen Goblin, but looks like she's coming back. We'll see how this plays out, if it does in this comic run at all. They're obviously gonna lean more into the Dr. Octopus side, but it's cool seeing the Queen Goblin come back, and hopefully she does do something in this story. Also, I liked how they ended the story with J. Jonah Jameson, of course, super angry at their competitor publisher, putting out a story over him rampaging over the city with the original Dr. Octopus arms, which happened in the first issue, but they were actually trying to seek out the person that would know Peter Parker or something like that. I don't quite remember that issue very well, but they were just seeking out Spider-Man, I think. They weren't actually causing havoc or anything. Since that issue, it looks like they formed a bond with JJ, and so once the original Dr. Octopus arms got like destroyed, they crawled over to him because, like in issue 6, maybe they're seeking out Spider-Man's help that way. So it's gonna be fun watching this play out. Overall, pretty fun issue. I liked it, heavily enjoyed it, and can't wait to see where this goes. Anyways, I appreciate you guys for listening to me talk about this comic book, and if you want to hear me talk about more amazing Spider-Man comics or just comics in general, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.